And why that's important is it doesn't matter where you're from, and it doesn't matter what your backgrounds are. You are with me sharing this planet here. And the reason you should be directing students to do environmental courses, which I'm going to talk about, is because you're on this lump of rock right now with me. And 7.5 billion fellow human beings are on this planet as well. And when you look at it from space, one thing strikes you straight away, doesn't it? There's no escape. You can't just turn around and say, hey, I don't want to play. I want to be off of this planet. I don't like what's going on. You are stuck. And no matter where you are, you share the planet. The atmosphere is continuous. The land masses are continuous. The oceans are continuous. There's a famous phrase, isn't there? You can run, but you can't hide. And as far as the environment's concerned, that's the problem. At the minute, we're gripped in this terrible pandemic, but they'll find an answer. We'll find an answer. The medics will find an answer. We'll be through that. And in a few years' time, people look back and say, oh, well, yes, you know, it was a bad period for human beings. But environment, there's no quick fix for the environment. There's no vaccine. There's no way we're going to solve the problems that we're seeing daily, continuously, no matter where you are on the planet. Look at these stats. I just stuck this together just so you can look at the blooming stats. At the minute, the amount of resources our technology and science is demanding is 1.6 planets. Well, we haven't got 1.6 planets, and we can't go away and use a magic printer to print us another one. And in just 15 years' time, we're going to need 2 planets. So since 2012, we've been overrunning the resources available to us on this Earth. And therefore, we've got to do something about it. The other problem for us is 85% of the species in the biosphere we know nothing about. And we are one of those species in the biosphere. We're an animal, whether we like it or not, whether we wish to think culturally otherwise. That's all we are. You're listening to this, I'm listening to this. We're all mortal. We are one day going to dance with a reaper. We're all going to meet our maker. And therefore, because we are animals, we are totally and utterly dependent upon the biosphere, like every other animal, like so many other organisms. And yet this biosphere is the very system, on the one hand, that's our life support system, and on the other, that we're destroying at an unprecedented rate just for consumerism. And we can't carry on. Just look at this. At the minute, our technology wants 55 billion tons of resource, biomass, fossil energy, metals, minerals, whatever you like to call it. That's a huge amount that the planet cannot sustain. And going after that, we're destroying it. So the reason you should be diverting your students, your inquirers rather, coming through your office doors, you should be telling them to come and do environmental science, because it's their future, and it's your future, and it's everybody else's future. It doesn't matter about everything else. If we can't conserve the planet and its resources, all else won't count. No amount of worrying about business and economies will plug that gap, because every one of us needs exactly the same resources: food, oxygen, and water. And they don't come from our businesses. They don't come from our consumer world. They come from the biosphere. And therefore, we need to look after that, and all the support systems go with it. So, here at Plymouth, half a century ago, we ran a series of open workshops. Anybody in the world could have come along and joined in, and they did. Because we were determined to try and do something about the mess this planet's in. And consequently, we decided we were going to run an environmental science degree. And it was based upon all of the data and information that came out of those talks. This is what emerged. This is what it's based upon. It's recognized that the world is made up of a series of inextricably interrelated systems. And the important thing about this little model here is this bit, because it dawned on us that in order to do something about the mess the world is in, you have to incorporate things that are nothing to do with science and technology. Human beings do not make decisions based upon science and technology only. We base them upon socioeconomic, political, ethical, cultural, moral, spiritual, religious things. All of these combine to make a human being decide upon a particular path of action. And often it's irrational in terms of science and technology. So to teach this subject, to teach how we're going to do something about the environment, it's not enough to know all the science up here, the physico-chemical world, the biological system. We've got to know the cultural ones, because we're the only creatures that, so far as we know, have legislation, philosophical concepts, so-called economic strategies and political systems. And therefore, faced with that, we put together this, one of the first environmental programs in Western Europe. And it's based upon that model you've just seen. And that means that we produced over the last half a century or so, getting on for just over 6,000 graduates. And the important thing is they're working in 30 countries around the world. And they're working in just about every sector that you can possibly imagine to do with the environment. 70% of our graduates, wherever they are doing something linked to the environment. And we've done this through these courses. The initial one was environmental science, but recently we've created a sister program called Environmental Management Sustainability, and we support 2 postgraduate talk programs, environmental consultancy and sustainable environmental management. So what's the big deal with environmental science? As I've just said, one of the first of its type in Western Europe. If you roll the clock back half a century, there was only 5 places across Europe that were teaching something called environmental science. And therefore, because we've been running for 50 years, we've got a typical intake of around about 100, and more actually will graduate because we have direct entry routes, which I'll mention in a moment. We've got around about 6,000 graduates working in more than 30 countries worldwide. Down here, these are just the ones at the minute. So we've got students from Argentina, Bahrain, Barbados, China, Ghana, Hong Kong, India, Jamaica, Kenya, Malaysia, Nepal, Sudan, Trinidad, United Arab Emirates, United States, Zambia, Europe. This, of course, produces a rich international flavor to our program, not just in terms of the way that we're teaching it, but of course in terms of the experience of these students coming. At the minute, we've got, as you can see, around about 25 to 30 nationalities currently on the course. And it's a 3-year program with optional placement year, like so many else you've heard about. Full international exchange opportunities where you can spend 1 year abroad. And as I mentioned, we're interdisciplinary. To do that, we need a broad range of academic staff that don't just include scientists and technologists, but get us into those that are more experienced and knowledgeable about the human environment. The syllabus is international. It has to be, because environmental problems don't recognize countries. In fact, countries don't exist. They're just squiggly lines that we human beings draw on a map. There is no Africa, there is no Middle East, there is no Southeast Asia, just land. And we draw lines across it and call this bit Kenya, that bit Nigeria, etc. These are artificial. And therefore, because the air is continuous, the land mass is continuous, the oceans are continuous, we need to look at it in that dimension. So the syllabus is truly interdisciplinary. To do that, yes, just like all the other programs you've been listening to, we support that with a lot of laboratory and field work. And we have, it's very important that this international dimension of what we do is not lost. So we run, as well as UK, residential field courses like so many of the other programs that you've been listening to, international ones. It's important we get our students abroad to look at the sort of problems that other countries face. A few other things. Yes, high ranking. In fact, environmental science, I think we've just gone, there's only one other university in the UK that's got a higher ranking at the moment. I'm thinking about this all the time from the international dimension, because one of my other roles is to look after international students. And it's very important we have a good pastoral care system with a full personal tutor scheme. Also, language is an issue for lots of international students. They worry about it. We've got an excellent language support system generally, and it's also actually embedded in this program. Another thing that worries international students is, of course, assessment. Sometimes they worry about their ability in terms of written English, etc. We're moving more and more towards, like most other universities around the world, to an assessment pattern that puts exams in a minor position. So only 7% of that course is examined by formal examination. This is important. I've got a direct entry route. Nearly 1,000 graduates have come from a direct entry arrangements that we've got with a number of countries around the world, mostly in Southeast Asia, and they will come into the final year. And that's an important thing, again, that you can use in your various sales pitches, that people are on sub-degree programs, higher diplomas, associate science programs, these sorts of things. They have the opportunity maybe to join the program later on. And this has, of course, for them, financial implications. Entry qualifications, no fixed subject requirement. It's so interdisciplinary. As long as there's some science background, and it doesn't have to be conventional qualifications, it could be all sorts of qualifications, we're quite prepared to accept a very flexible entry profile. Yes, we're professional body accreditation like all the other stuff we've been listening to. The important thing is this isn't a talk shop about environmental problems. We've got to do something about the mess the world is in. So we've got to equip these graduates with the skills and knowledge to do something about it. And that's why they're getting employment all around the world, because all countries, no matter who they are now waking up to the fact that they've got to produce policies. They've got to have strategies to do something about the mess that they're in. And to do that, they don't just need the specialist scientists, they need them, but they need the environmental scientists as well. Of managing...
Amit Gupta की आ गई payment receipt.
Sorry?
हाँ, आ गई. अभी प्रीति की email आई है.
Okay. Sorry, there's an interruption there, which I can't hear. In addition to environmental science, we produced a new program. It's called Environmental Management and Sustainability. All the details are on the website. I'm not going to go into it in any detail. What it's about is this. It's producing, as these countries produce more and more requirement to legislate, to comply with environmental standards, environmental problems, we need to emphasize more those aspects. So we really are tightening the screw in terms of material in the program that looks at environmental management policies and sustainability strategies. Career opportunities are the same as environmental science, identical emissions policy. I've just waited for a few months to show some of the countries and some of the things our graduates are getting up to. So look, Singapore, South Africa, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, USA, Ecuador, Thailand, Nigeria, New Zealand, Ireland. Look at it yourself. These are where our graduates are, and this is what they're doing. And what strikes you is when you look down the employment list, how varied it is. That's the point. It's very varied. So again, just look at this lot. You know, but what jumps out at you all the time when I look at the jobs that these students are getting, they are all linked to the environment. One of the big areas, of course, is environmental consultancy, but they're everywhere. Look at this new one here, a new post just created in Hong Kong. A sustainability officer, one of our graduates gets that, etc. So when you look down it, look at it, is UK-based ones, and of course, because this is being recorded, you can digest this at your leisure when you've got time. But again, you'll see just how versatile this degree is, and what it's also showing you is just how countries are now getting more and more worried about the environment and what they've got to do about it. Nobody can duck any longer. You can't just turn around and say as a country, hey, I don't want to play, because you've got no choice but to play, because you're sharing the watersheds, you're sharing the air, you're sharing the resources, and no country is sustainable on its own. It doesn't have the resources to be sustainable on its own. So you're looking truly at a picture of international cooperation if you want to survive. And to do that, you've got to take notice of your environmental credentials, your environmental compliance requirements, etc. And that's where our students are, that's where our graduates are. They are literally all over the world, from ministerial level. We've had ministerial level in Africa, ministerial level in New Zealand, etc., etc., all the way across the world in these sorts of sectors. So you can look at this at your own pace. So, like I say, I'm not really going to go into any of this in any detail. You've heard all of the other sales pitch. The bottom line is this. If you want to do environmental science, Plymouth has an international reputation, which is justified. Our master's programs, as I mentioned, we've got two that are relevant: environmental consultancy and sustainable resource management. Here's just a summary of what their backgrounds are. Remember what other people have told you. They're one-year programs, so that's a plus compared with the United States, Australia, etc., etc. This one has got an incredibly high employment record. It really is more or less 100%. And again, if you run your eyes down this, it's a fairly flexible program in terms of its admissions policy. Sustainable resource management, It's very similar to environmental consultancy, but because it's looking at management, then it focuses in upon those systems that organizations need to develop in order to manage their environmental portfolio, but also try and operate within a sustainability policy. And of course, a sustainability policy will not just be an environmental sustainable policy, but it's going to be an economic one as well. And that's why more and more of our graduates will get those sorts of jobs, particularly with the big organizations that have to balance environment versus economics. So I'm going to wrap it up because you've had enough. Goodness me, you must have had enough. I just want to leave you with a bit of a thought about this when someone asks you about what they should be doing. Look what Einstein says. Two things are certain in this world: the universe and human stupidity. And then he paused and he said, I'm not certain about the universe. Boy, is he right. The one thing you can guarantee is this: human stupidity. And to go after this relentless, pointless materialism we're locked into, we're smashing the planet apart. And young people, thanks to things like social network platforms and so on, they've had enough of it. And they're talking to each other around the world about what sort of world they live in, what sort of mess they see around them. And they've had enough. And we now have this Extinction Rebellion movement, which is trying to draw attention to the fact that the world is in a mess. And these people are demonstrating. Well, what I want you to tell those students who walk through the door who are interested in doing something about the environmental mess they may be experiencing in their country is get the skills and knowledge to do something about it. For you, and to do that, they should be looking at environmental science and the environmental portfolio at Plymouth. Okay, I've had enough, and I'm sure you have.